sure we'll ever get a final answer, but I'm absolutely convinced the number is much higher, perhaps as much as 5 to 10 times as high as that. It's because the records are so poor. They just didn't bother keeping track of children who died. I think that's unacceptable.
In my family, we lost 2 of my great uncles, and they died at residential school back in the 1910s. One of them didn't come home, and the other one did come home. He was very ill with tuberculosis, and he died very shortly after he came home. The 2 deaths had a great impact on my family. In fact, really changed everything. My great-grandparents decided at that point that they did not and were not willing to lose any more children. And so they ended up really running away, as the family story goes, in the middle of the night, running to Regina. At that point, there was a pass system, and you had to have permission from the Indian agent to leave your community, and anybody had the right to ask to see your pass if you were off reserve. So they really, when they fled to Regina, they really had to lie low like they were illegal immigrants in their own country. I mean, my great-grandparents spoke their language perfectly, beautifully, spoke Cree, and they were very deliberate in not passing that down to their children and in not passing that down to their grandchildren. They didn't want us to know the language because they were so afraid. Our family went back to Brandon Residential School to just walk through it and to be there, to try and do something small to honor them, to honor their loss, just to walk where they had walked, to be where they had last been.
First year, we didn't like our parents. We didn't like our grandparents. We didn't like our extended families because of what had been pounded into our heads that Indians were no good. We had no culture. We couldn't talk a sensible language. So that was the start of my indoctrination, where they say, kill the Indian in a child. That's exactly what they were doing, killing. When you left the residential school, it was very, very isolated incidents where people would go back and live on reserve. We were gone. I didn't return for years and years. I was on the move.
I got frightened when I was a little girl, when the principal used to beat up the other children, like boys. The boys got the most beating. They used to call it bench party, and it was usually done after supper. And that's where I got frightened, because I saw blood.
I remember when we had to shower. You only have to show me how to shower and clean and wash myself, how to wash my private and my, private parts of your body. You only have to show a kid once or twice at the most, but not every day. And have the supervisor come in there and basically take advantage of you,
I just remember arriving there and donning new clothes and, of course, getting a haircut and sitting in a classroom and being with other girls and witnessing my brother get punched by the supervisor.
My name is Alice Little Deer. I'm 78 years old. I spent about 8 years in residential school.
My name is Raymond Mason. I'm 62 years old, and I attended residential school for 12 years.
I'm Madeline Dion Stout. I'm 62 years old. I'm from the Kihiwan First Nation in Alberta. I attended Blue Quills Residential School for 36 consecutive months. That would be 3 years.
In order to educate the children properly, we must separate them from their families. Some people may say that this is hard, but if we want to civilize them, we must do that. A federal cabinet minister, 1883.
I remember them taking me away from my mother and my stepfather. And I can hear them telling my mom that that was the best thing for me, you know, and that not to worry, I would be looked after.
Our parents didn't want to worry us unduly and tell us and warn us that we are going to be separated for a long, long time with barely a visit.
I see him come around, Indian agent in a boat with the principal, then collect some children from the reserve. Mm-hmm. Then he would come back again, come and take some more.
So the next day, I woke up with hundreds of total strangers, my size, my age, and not knowing, you know, what are they doing with all of us here? Why are there's so many of us here, you know? And that's where a lot of my whole life really started to change, because I got strapped. I got beaten up for speaking my own native tongue. I even had my tongue pulled out and pinched, you know.
My strongest memory there is when the little girl died beside me. She must have been about 6. I was scared why the parents were not there. That's what I was scared about. And I knew they wouldn't feel comfortable for not being there when their daughter is dying.
And do you know why they weren't there?
They were never notified.
Indian children in the residential schools die at a much higher rate than in their villages. But this does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem. Duncan Campbell Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Indian Affairs.
At that time, they never told us that our sisters were across the hallway. And I didn't know that for the longest time. Then I spotted my sister, Nora, and I was so glad and so hysteric, and I went running to her and I reached out to her, you know, and just hugged her, and I was just shaking, like, you know, and terrified. And I was wondering why she was pushing me away. I didn't realize that we weren't supposed to know that we both lived in the same place, and we weren't allowed to speak to each other. We weren't allowed to talk to each other. And I can remember the principal grabbing a hold of me by the hand, you know, and I was jumping off the floor like that, and he stripped me. And he started whacking me with a long, webbed strap. He was setting an example that, you know, if you do this, is what's going to happen to you. Like, and all the other boys were watching, and the girls were still going through, you know.
Their education must consist not merely training of the mind, but of a weaning from the habits and feelings of their ancestors and the acquirements of the language, art, and customs of civilized life. Edgerton Ryerson, 1847 report for Indian Affairs.
Even that whip was a miniature cat o' nine tailed, I think it's called. It's just a short one, but it still has the steel things in it, and it could rip you apart. There were 3 boys that ran away. They were brought back. They were called out with boys in the boys' room. And each boy got whipped in front of us and right in the bottom. And it just ripped their skin. It made them bleed from broken skin.